We just went over Maya tools and technicality. Now we're gonna go over ball bounce. So ball bounce is super important when learning how to animate. It's very much the 12 principles of animation. I'm going to be going over them in the recording, and we're gonna go over kind of what it takes to animate this ball. All right, so we have our ball rig imported into the scene, and you can see that it has these controls over it. So as I explained in the last lesson, we kind of used the channel box to set keys and animate. So we're gonna do the same thing with these controls, because these controls actually control the geometry. This is the main control. You can set like visibility. If you want the tail to be visible, which we'll be animating later, you can turn that on. This is the main control that I'm going to be using to translate and rotate stuff. These are squash and stretch controls. Very, very useful. We're going to be using them a lot. There's one on the top and there's one on the bottom. There's even these little eye controls, just for fun. So we're going to be animating these controls that control the geometry and deform the geometry to make a ball bounce using the 12 principles of animation, which I, again, will be going over during this process. So I made a rudimentary set. He's going to jump over this wall, jump one more time, and then stop at the edge of this crevice. So one of the things is to put character into this. So he's not just going to be a regular ball just like falling down and bouncing. He's going to be in control of his own actions. He's going to be a thinking character. So he's going to actually choose to jump over this and jump again and then stop. So I'm going to create a quick camera from the side. So I'm going to go to Panels, Orthographic, Side. This is going to be a direct side camera. I'm going to be making a create camera from view. So this will create another camera from this view. It's going to be right here. It's a side one. Just rename it shot cam. I like to keep myself organized that way. I'm going to go into render settings, which is over here, making sure the preset is HD 720. This will help with our play blast settings. Going to the attribute editor with the camera selected, going down. So we're going to go up here first because that's where you go by default. And then we're going to go down and say display resolution. You'll get these bars, and then the gate mask color should be black and the gate mask opacity should be 1. So this is cinematic quality shot. This is how you kind of set up your shot. And then I'm going to lock my camera. So one more thing to do is to go into preferences. In the last lesson, I said to make the tangent auto. We're going to change that. We're going to keep the top one auto, so default in tangent auto, and we're going to make the default out tangent stepped. And what stepped is, it's going to be pose to pose. We're not going to immediately get the automatic in-betweens. We're just going to focus on poses and how the motion looks like as a blocked animation, which is how you should be starting every animation as kind of when you start out animating. It just makes it much, much easier. We're going to select all the controls here, not select our geometry, or set geometry, select all the controls. And if you have ATools installed, selection sets, where you can group selection sets. So I can say ball all. Make it red. Great. So now every time I select that, it's going to select all the controls I just selected. Set our first key on everything. Make sure everything is selected. And then in frame 3, I'm going to set a squash key. So I'm going to bring this guy down, and this will serve as our antic. So what an antic is, is an animation principle, one of the 12, that makes it so we can read the next action. So when a baseball player hits a ball, he prepares to swing, which is the anticipation, and then he swings, which is the action. So this is our antic. And since he's going to be going over this, I'm going to bring this way. If you look now, we don't have our frame 2 in between. We just have 1 and 3, which is fine for now, because we want to focus on these poses. So we have 1 to 3. If we press play, which is spacebar for me, but you can go over here and press play. We go 1 to 3, and then 2 more frames later, we stretch, and then this is very exaggerated, which is another animation principle, exaggeration. This means that we're exaggerating our poses, and we are doing pose-to-pose animation. And squash and stretch is also another animation principle. So we're going over here, and then we're going to go to frame 10, take this guy. Remember, we're setting keys on every single control. So when I'm going through, I have a hotkey, but I can go through, press S, press S, press S, press S. And then we're going to go over here. And we want to make sure our line is proper. Maybe we don't have to go this angled, we can go a little less. And then we can tween machine our way back. And then on frame 15, set another key on everything. We can zero this out, so we can press this power button and make sure our ball is going over here. Let's try to zoom out, unlock the camera, zoom out, just so you have some proper headroom. Bring it over. When we play, it looks like this. So we're having choppy animation, but that's good because we're just focusing on poses. And we can always edit this later. This isn't final by any means. Yeah, and then we don't want to keep it stretched through the bounce because we want it to retain its shape, and we don't have anything that's affecting it. So the reason it's stretching and squashing is because the ground is making it squash. There's something pushing up, which is making it squash down. And then it wanting to go up is the stretch. So we have it going through, and then we're gonna have it come down. I'm just gonna guess frame 20. We're gonna have it stretch a little bit coming back. I think we could stay a little bit higher. And then we're gonna have it be a little more shallow of a bounce. And then we're gonna come all the way down. Let's try frame 24. So if I shift select this key and I move it back, I can move around those keys. We're not concerned with our graph editor just yet, as I went over last time. We will get there after we convert our keys into auto. And then make sure our angle is proper. Make sure all our keys have everything keyed on every single key. And then we can squash down because it's hitting the ground. And we can angle it this way. for its next jump. Remember to set keys on every control. And then we can have a much lower bounce now because we can pretend it's losing energy. Make sure to zero this guy out. We can do this, or we can do this. Either one. And make sure if you do this, you don't keep having it selected. You want to select off of it, because if we have these selected, then it's just going to set keys on those attributes, and we don't want that. And then we come back down. We'll move this key over a little bit. I think it's bouncing a little too far. So now we can use the tween machine actually to auto in between this. So we have ball all, and then let's just do in the middle. And then let's tween machine this to be closer to this key, so there's some hang time. And let's actually have it go a little bit higher. And now this is where we can kind of go into our graph editor and mess with stuff. So we can go over here, just push it up. So this is the translate Y attribute graph. So we can go here, take all these keys, and push it up, and it'll affect every single key that I played with. Extend the timeline just a little bit. We don't have to stretch this much because we're not falling from that great of a height. And then we'll squash, stretch over, which is overshoot. It's not part of the main 12, but technically there's 24 animation principles, and we're not going to go into all of them, but overshoot can be classified as one of them. So we're overshooting the pose. Let's pretend that this is at the very edge. So he's being really careful and trying not to fall. Overshoot, and then squash back. And now we have our blocking. And even though it's choppy, which is fine, this is what you first show to a supervisor or a lead. You would show this initial idea pass, and they would give their notes based on this. So one of the notes they'd probably give based on this is that this first bounce is feeling way, way too slow. If we shift select until this bounce, we can actually scale the keys down. So if we take this arrow, we can scale this amount. So let's scale that. Make sure to snap the keys. What's happening right now is that the keyframes are on non-integer frames. So it's like 15.5, which we don't want. We want clean keyframes. Select everything, shift select everything, and then say snap. It'll snap it to keyframes. And now we have our ball squashing too fast, so I'll just move this over. And then we can move the rest of the stuff over accordingly. We're not scaling the rest of the stuff. We're just scaling the first part. Now that feels better. So we have our first pass, which is awesome. And now after you address the note, and you show it to your supervisor, and they're like, great, please keep progressing. So what you're going to do is select all your controls, go to your graph editor, and say auto. This is an auto tangent. You can see it down on the bottom left. This is an auto tangent converter. This will make all your curves into auto tangents. And you see how right now the keys are in stepped. So there's no in between until the next key is placed, which is what you want for stepped. They look like steps, which is why they're called steps. Stepped keys. So we're going to go auto, and this will make it curves. Selection became auto, but we can manually do this. So shift select, right click, tangents, auto. So that's kind of what it looks like after we press auto. And it kind of looks like crap, to be honest. And this is very normal. Don't panic. So a lot of times when we convert things into spline or auto, the keys are going to be very slow. So like you see how here where it's kind of taking a really long time to go up. We don't really want that. We want it to not take that much time. So again, I'm going to take all my keys from 8 to 43, move it this way. So now it goes from here to here much faster. Already better. But I want more of a hang time. So I'm going to take 14 to 41 and move it over to the right. Yep, and I'm going to move 10 over to frame 11. So now we have more hang time for this ball. And then we can even speed up this ball coming down. So just bring this one key over to the left. And now the time it takes for the ball to kind of squash, then stretch up, feels really, really slow. So I'm going to take all the keys again, move it one over to the left, take these keys, one more to the left. Yeah, now it feels like an actual bounce because what it's doing is that it's coming down, squashing, then stretching, and we just feel it. We don't need to see it that much, even though we are kind of seeing it. But we don't need to see this whole like slow squash and stretch. We don't need to see that. So we have our hang time. And right now this feels kind of even. It feels like it's kind of default just splining or like interpolating through this squash pose. And we want to favor one or the other. So let's favor the left side. So we're going to go here. We're going to select this control. And we're translating this control down, translate Y, to get that squash effect. So translate Y, and we're going to set a key. You can right click, insert key. And we're going to favor this side. We can do it with the Tween Machine too. So Control Z, favor this side. So now it's going to favor one side and then squash and then stretch, which feels good. This section over here also feels like it needs just more hang time. So I'm going to give it some breathing room, shift these over. Shift this over, shift this over. Now we have some nice hang time. And it feels nice.